She lived the American dream until it turned into a deadly nightmare. Elena Kiejliches, a glamorous Russian immigrant and Staten Island housewife, seemed to have it all: a wealthy businessman husband, two beautiful children, and a picture-perfect life. But beneath the polished surface lurked a web of secrets, betrayal, and chilling ambition. In 2000, that perfect life unraveled in blood when Boris Kiejliches was found murdered and dumped like trash in a city landfill. What followed was a sensational murder case that shocked New York, twisting love lies and lethal obsession into one of the most dramatic true crime stories in decades. Classification: murderer characteristics. Love triangle. According to prosecutors, the Kiejliches marriage was falling apart with Elena in the throes of a love affair with Brooklyn ex-convict and aspiring rapper Messiah Justice. Number of victims: 1. Date of murder: March 24, 2000. Date of arrest: May 5, 2000. Date of birth: April 15, 1966. Victim profile: her millionaire husband, Boris Kiejliches, 49, Russian businessman. Method of murder: shooting location: Staten Island, Richmond County, New York, USA. Status: sentenced to 22 years to life in prison on September 24, 2002. Russian émigré Elena Kiejliches was living the American dream. At 36, she had two beautiful children, a millionaire husband, and a sprawling mansion in Staten Island's upscale Tolt Hill neighborhood. But Elena's fairy tale life came crashing down in March of 2000 when her husband Boris went missing. A month later, Boris turned back up, dead and dismembered in a cardboard barrel found floating in a marsh in Queens. Police first suspected the Russian mob in Boris's death, but the focus of their investigation soon shifted to Elena after they learned she had been having an affair with a man named Messiah Justice, an aspiring rapper and con artist. Following an interrogation with Justice, police charged the Russian housewife with murder. At trial, Justice testified that he had helped Elena dispose of Boris' body, but that the Russian housewife had pulled the trigger herself. The prosecution contended that Elena had shot Boris after he had threatened to divorce her and leave her destitute. The defense, however, painted Justice as an opportunist looking to cut a deal with the DA. The jury found Elena guilty of second-degree murder. She was sentenced to 22 years to life in prison. Federal judge denies convicted Staten Island murderess's bid to overturn conviction, August 1, 2011. Staten Island and Wine. Found guilty in 2002 of slaying her millionaire husband, Tot Hill resident, Elena Kiejliches has spent the ensuing years maintaining her innocence and trying to overturn her conviction. State courts have turned her down, and now so has a federal court on each of 7 different issues she raised, including the veracity of her ex-lover's pivotal testimony against her. District Judge Nicholas G. Garofis of Brooklyn Federal Court has denied Mrs. Kiejliches' challenge of her conviction for second-degree murder and evidence tampering. The judge ruled there was no proof she had been found guilty against the weight of the evidence or had been denied due process to a fair trial. This claim has no merit, the judge wrote in a ruling filed on Friday. Mrs. Kiejliches, who represented herself, can appeal the decision to a federal appellate court. She could not immediately be reached today for comment. The glamorous Russian émigré, now 45, is serving a sentence of 22 years to life for the March 24, 2000 execution-style killing of Boris Kiejliches. She is not eligible for parole until June 2024. Prosecutors contended Mrs. Kiejliches snuffed out Kiejliches, 48, a jet fuel magnate whose net worth was estimated at $3 million, because he had threatened financial ruin after they argued over money divorcing, and her affair with Messiah Justice, a smooth-talking, streetwise felon. Mrs. Kiejliches maintained Justice, now 37, cooperated with authorities to try to save his own skin. He testified that she confessed to slaying Kiejliches in the basement of their pricey East Loop Road home. Mrs. Kiejliches then whisked away her young son and daughter on a planned Disney World vacation, saying her husband had left in the middle of the night, prosecutors said. Justice admitted dumping the body in a cardboard barrel into an inlet near the Brooklyn-Queens border. Kiejliches' badly decomposed corpse, bound and wrapped in towels, was found in the barrel about a month later. Justice pleaded guilty to evidence tampering and hindering prosecution and was sentenced to 1 1/3 to 3 years in prison. We presented overwhelming evidence to a Staten Island jury that the defendant murdered her husband Boris Kiejliches, and they returned a guilty verdict in less than 3 hours, said District Attorney Daniel Donovan today. I am confident that verdict will be upheld by every judge at every stage of the appeal process. Assistant District Attorney Ann Grady handled the appeal. Mrs. Kiejliches contested the verdict on several fronts. In particular, she argued that Justice's testimony was impermissibly unreliable because he had cozied up to authorities. Garofis deemed there was no evidence of perjury. Mrs. Kiejliches makes no showing that Justice was too uncredible for the jury to credit his testimony, the judge wrote. It is axiomatic that using a cooperating witness does not violate due process. The jury was instructed by the court that they were to scrutinize Justice's testimony in light of the fact that Justice was a cooperating witness and may receive a benefit for testifying. Kiejliches also shot down Mrs. Kiejliches' allegations that prosecutors had withheld exculpatory evidence and of juror misconduct. The evidence consisted of a microcassette tape memorializing a post-murder phone conversation between Mrs. Kiejliches and Justice. Justice called her from a police station to try to glean information, court papers said. Mrs. Kiejliches contended that Justice told her he had to kill her husband because he was a threat after learning of their affair. However, at a pre-trial hearing, Assistant District Attorney Wanda de Oliveira said detectives and Justice told her neither person made a damaging admission on the tape advance reports show. Authorities lost the cassette. Kiejliches ruled that Mrs. Kiejliches, who participated in the conversation, was not precluded from the evidence and could have introduced it at trial. Mrs. Kiejliches did not testify. He also said there was no evidence the tape was lost in bad faith. Authorities said the cassette had either fallen out of a box it was placed in, or a prosecutor had unintentionally lost an envelope containing it. Moreover, Kiejliches said trial justice Stephen J. Rooney had properly instructed jurors they could infer the tape, had it been produced, may not have supported or may have even contradicted witness testimony. Kiejliches also found there was no evidence of egregious juror misconduct. Among other things, Mrs. Kiejliches contended the jury was prejudiced because a panelist knew one of the trial prosecutors. Hubby Slayer gets 22 years. By Mary Engels, New York Daily News. Wednesday, September 25, 2002. A Staten Island woman convicted of killing her husband, a Russian oil tycoon, so she could be with her rapper boyfriend, was sentenced to 22 years to life yesterday. But Messiah Justice, the rapper whose testimony helped convict Elena Kiejliches, has disappeared while awaiting sentencing on charges of hindering prosecution, authorities said. Justice faces 1 to 7 years under his plea agreement. Kiejliches, 36, insisted it was Justice who killed Boris Kiejliches in the basement of the couple's Staten Island home March 24, 2000. The body of Boris Kiejliches was found stuffed in a barrel and floating in Jamaica Bay. Woman guilty of killing spouse and moving body, June 26, 2002. A Staten Island woman who was accused of killing her husband, a prosperous Russian businessman, and then taking her children to Walt Disney World before reporting the man missing, was convicted yesterday of second-degree murder and evidence tampering. A state Supreme Court jury in Staten Island found the woman, Elena Kiejliches, 36, guilty after about 3 hours of deliberation. Ms. Kiejliches faces 25 years to life in prison when she is sentenced on July 15th, said Monica Brown, a spokeswoman for the Richmond County District Attorney's Office. The police found the body of Ms. Kiejliches' husband, Boris, 49, in a cardboard barrel in a marsh near the Belt Parkway on the Brooklyn-Queens border on April 25, 2000. He had been dead for some time when he was discovered, police officers who investigated the scene said, and had been shot once in the head with a large caliber pistol. Mr. Kiejliches was last seen on March 28, 2000, near his lavish home in the Tot Hill section of Staten Island. His 125,000 Mercedes-Benz was recovered near the Brighton Beach boardwalk. The Kiejliches had been married for 8 years and had a history of domestic violence, the police said. They also had 2 children, a boy who was 8 and a girl who was 5 at the time of the murder. Ms. Kiejliches took the children on a vacation to Disney World before reporting her husband missing to the police. When Ms. Kiejliches finally approached the authorities, she declined to talk to investigators and hired a lawyer. In searching the Kiejliches' house, which was impeccably kept, detectives said they found that a section of carpet was missing, suggesting that someone had removed it to conceal evidence. The jury found Ms. Kiejliches responsible for moving and hiding her husband's body. Ex-beau testifies versus widow. Thursday, June 13, 2002. The lover of accused murderer Elena Kiejliches testified yesterday that she showered him with expensive gifts, dinners at ritzy restaurants, and $85,000 in cash before asking him to dump her slain husband's body. The request came after Kiejliches allegedly put a bullet in the back of her millionaire husband Boris' head in the basement of their Staten Island mansion on March 24, 2000. Messiah Justice 28 told a Staten Island Supreme Court jury in Kiejliches' trial that she admitted the murder that night, saying, "He hit me. I killed him because I couldn't take it anymore." The next day, she took her 2 young kids to Walt Disney World in Florida, he testified. Kiejliches, clad in a tailored cream-colored suit, sat stone-faced and silent as her boyfriend portrayed her as a calculating yet sometimes out-of-control killer. Justice said Kiejliches frantically called him to her Tot Hill home the night of the murder and met him at the door with a red substance on her hands and blue spandex pants. While her children, Edward now 9 and Sonia now 7, slept upstairs, Justice said Kiejliches brought him to the finished basement where a body lay on the floor wrapped in sheets and tied with cord. Justice said when he asked how it happened, Kiejliches replied, "Don't worry, it's not your business. You're not involved in this, and I'm going to take care of you, sweetie. But you have to help me, I'd help you." Justice, who pleaded guilty to lesser charges involving the crime and faces up to 7 years behind bars, said he first dropped the body in an abandoned building in Brooklyn and later put it in a barrel and dumped it into Jamaica Bay. 100 calls. While she was in Florida, Justice testified Kiejliches called him nearly 100 times to make sure everything was taken care of. She said, "This is important. It's my life. He can't be found." Justice said Kiejliches later put an $8,000 down payment on a $300,000 Bentley, which was to be her thank you gift to him for his help. But the check bounced. Still, Justice testified he did very well during his 1.5-year fling with the defendant, whom he met when they stopped next to each other at a traffic light on 7th Ave in Manhattan and exchanged smiles, then phone numbers. He said Kiejliches bought him tennis shoes, 3 cell phones, warm-up suits, and several jackets worth more than $500 in each, and also gave him 2 cash gifts of $50,000 and $35,000 with which he bought jewelry. Trial opens for slain Bisman's wife. Friday, June 7, 2002. 2 years after a barrel containing the body of her millionaire husband washed up in Queens, prosecutors began calling witnesses yesterday against accused murderer Elena Kiejliches. The 36-year-old mother of 2 is charged with fatally shooting Boris Kiejliches in the basement of their Staten Island home on April 24, 2000, and tampering with the evidence. According to prosecutors, the Kiejliches marriage was falling apart with Elena in the throes of a love affair with Brooklyn ex-convict and aspiring rapper Messiah Justice, 28. Now the 2 ex-lovers are pointing the finger at each other, with Justice expected to testify for the prosecution at the trial in Staten Island Supreme Court. The perfect shot. Assistant District Attorney Mark Palladino said Kiejliches was so taken with her paramour that she had hawked $85,000 in jewelry and showered Messiah Justice with money and gifts. Rather than get a legal divorce, she got her own divorce, Palladino told the jury of 7 men and 5 women. Elena Kiejliches fired a single gunshot into the back of her husband's head while her children slept upstairs in their bedrooms. He called it the perfect shot. Palladino said Kiejliches then summoned Justice to the Tot Hill house and, with her hands and clothing covered in blood, took her lover to the cellar. There, they wrapped the body in loose sheets, tied the feet with an extension cord, and drove to Brooklyn to dump the remains, the prosecutor said. The following day, she hopped on a plane and headed to Disney World, Palladino said. Kept in touch while in Orlando with her children. Edward, now 9, and Sonia, now 7. Kiejliches ordered a new carpet for the basement and phoned Justice more than 200 times, Palladino said. Justice, who has admitted helping dispose of the body, will be among the more than 24 witnesses prosecutors are expected to call. Defense attorney John Murphy said it was Justice, a man with more than a dozen arrests and convictions for weapons possession, armed robbery, drug sales, and felonious assault, who fired the fatal bullet into Boris, who was in the fuel business. Kiejliches, dressed in a cream-colored skirt suit, sat quietly, with her hands folded in her lap as Murphy portrayed her as another victim of justice. Housewife versus Messiah in Slay, May 28, 2002. A Staten Island housewife who allegedly killed her millionaire husband and then took her kids on a trip to Disney World is expected to go on trial this week, with her ex-lover Messiah Justice as the star prosecution witness. The shocking case of the millionaire, his wife, and her lover is slated to begin jury selection today in Staten Island Supreme Court. But the trial of 34-year-old Elena Kiejliches may be delayed another week because of the trial judge's busy court schedule, officials said. Cops say Kiejliches shot her husband Boris in the head in the basement of the couple's $1 million home in March 2000. Authorities charge she then called her lover Justice, who helped her ditch the body and the murder weapon. The next day, she took her 2 children to Disney World. When she returned, she and Justice, an aspiring rapper, made a down payment on a $300,000 Bentley, according to court records. After suspicion fell on the free-spending widow, Justice pleaded guilty to helping dump the body and agreed to testify against his former paramour. Kiejliches' lawyer John Murphy Jr. said investigators mistakenly cut a deal with the real killer, Messiah. "This guy is a bad man by every standard," said Murphy. "He is the consummate con man." Murphy said that Justice, who has a long rap sheet, even conned 2 city cops into taking him onto a firing range to test out 9mm pistols just 2 months before the husband's killing. Officials believe Boris Kiejliches was killed with either a 9mm or 38 caliber gun. The DA's office screwed up. They should have made this guy Messiah the defendant, not my client. A 110-pound housewife, said Murphy. But prosecutors counter that Kiejliches is a vicious killer who executed her husband in order to take his millions. The DA's office also wants to show the jury evidence of her arrest last year for allegedly stabbing her new boyfriend in his Upper East Side apartment. Charges in that case were dismissed, but officials say it shows her capacity for violence. Even as she fights second-degree murder charges, she is also warring with her dead husband's family over his $4 million estate and custody of their 2 young children. Woman accused of killing husband and dumping body, May 7, 2000. The wife of a prosperous Russian businessman killed her husband in their lavish Staten Island home, had her boyfriend help her dump the body, then took her children on a vacation to Disney World before reporting her husband missing. the police said yesterday. The woman, Elena Kiejliches, 34, was arrested Friday and charged with second-degree murder in the killing of Boris Kiejliches, 49, who was found in a cardboard barrel in a marsh near the Belt Parkway on the Brooklyn-Queens border on April 25th, said William H. Alley, the chief of detectives. Mr. Kiejliches had been shot once in the head with a large-caliber pistol and his hands had been tied, Chief Alley said. He had been dead for some time when his body was discovered, the chief added. Mr. Kiejliches' $125,000 Mercedes-Benz had been found at the end of Coney Island Avenue near the Brighton Beach Boardwalk 3 weeks earlier, the chief said. He was last seen on March 28th, a week before that, near his home, at 91 East Loop Road in the Todd Hill section of Staten Island, a wealthy neighborhood. Ms. Kiejliches, who had been married to the victim for 8 years, had reported her husband missing. Chief Alley said, but detectives were extremely suspicious about the circumstances of Mr. Kiejliches' disappearance. Ms. Kiejliches had refused to talk to investigators about her husband's disappearance and had hired a lawyer, the police said. The case was investigated by detectives from Staten Island and Queens homicide squads and will be prosecuted on Staten Island because investigators believe that the killing took place in the basement of the couple's home, law enforcement officials said. A Brooklyn man officials identified as Ms. Kiejliches' boyfriend was also arrested in connection with the killing. Chief Ali said the man Messiah Justice 26 had helped Ms. Kiejliches dispose of her husband's body. He described Mr. Justice as an aspiring rap artist. One official said Mr. Justice often stayed at the couple's home while Mr. Kiejliches was away on business. Law enforcement officials said Mr. Justice, who has an arrest record dating to 1989, had made a statement to authorities in which he said Ms. Kiejliches had implicated herself in the murder. He was charged with hindering prosecution, tampering with evidence, and obstructing governmental administration, Chief Alley said. Referring to the location of the bullet wound that killed Mr. Kiejliches, one official also said investigators suspect that he was shot while sleeping or lying down. The couple, the official added, had a history of domestic violence. Detectives have learned that a section of carpet was missing from the otherwise immaculately kept home, suggesting to investigators that someone removed it to conceal evidence, several officials said. The murder weapon has not been recovered. Ms. Kiejliches took the couple's 2 children, an 8-year-old boy and a 5-year-old girl, to Disney World just before she reported her husband missing, Chief Ali said. Mr. Kiejliches had an aviation fuel business called Albo Intercorporation, which listed his Staten Island home as its address and was also affiliated with a dental business in Brooklyn, according to business records and a person who answered the telephone at the dental office. Chief Ali said Mr. Kiejliches spent a great deal of time in Russia on business but would not elaborate on the trips. An apparently distraught woman who answered the telephone at Mr. Kiejliches' home yesterday and identified herself as a family member would not discuss the killing or the arrest of Ms. Kiejliches. Yesterday, Chief Ali also announced an arrest in the killing of another Russian immigrant, Yuri Bershadsky, 32, whose naked corpse was found in a small copse of trees by the water's edge in the Eltingville section of Staten Island on April 25th. The police arrested Vladimir Zurin, 38, an associate of Mr. Bershadsky, on Friday in Van Nuys, Calif. The chief said the police were unsure of the motive for the killing, other than that the 2 men had a falling out. The police had initially suspected a connection between the 2 killings because the body of Mr. Kiejliches was also found on April 25th with a single gunshot wound to the head, Chief Ali said. But detectives soon ruled out a connection, he said. On the night of March 24th, Elena Kiejliches quietly entered the room where her husband Boris Kiejliches was sleeping and coldly shot him in the head. After committing the act, she wrapped his body in bedsheets, towels, and a black garbage bag, then frantically called her lover Messiah Justice, a young man with a criminal record. When Justice arrived, Elena led him to the basement where the body lay and asked for his help in disposing of it. Together they placed the body in a Range Rover along with blood-stained toys, drove to Brooklyn, and left the corpse in an abandoned building. Justice later returned with someone else's help, placed the body in a barrel, and dumped it in the water in East New York. The body was discovered a month later. Justice was arrested first and agreed to cooperate with the authorities, revealing the full story. Based on his testimony, Elena was arrested on May 15, 2000, and charged with second-degree murder and tampering with physical evidence. During the 3-week trial, Justice's testimony was central, supported by forensic experts and a witness who provided insight into Elena's motive. She was convicted on June 25, 2002. Elena repeatedly appealed and filed a federal habeas petition raising multiple claims, including insufficient evidence, violations of her right to confront witnesses, denial of a fair trial, and jury misconduct. However, the court dismissed all claims, finding no constitutional violations or significant legal errors. Ultimately, Elena Kiejliches' habeas petition was denied, and her conviction was upheld.